there, beautiful human. My name is Adorable, and welcome to Becoming Your Own Energy Healer. This is a series dedicated to folks who are seeking to learn about energy healing. And today we're going to be focusing on the collective energies, setting the foundational tone for what we should be expecting in the next couple of months and years. So let's get started. So first, I like to talk about the impact of Saturn moving into Aries. Now, Saturn moved into Aries February 13th, 2026. This particular transit is all about structure meeting your identity. As Saturn, the planet of discipline, pressure, and reality, comes into the domain of Aries, which is self, identity, and initiation. For some of us, there can be that feeling of an initiation of sorts, that we're being called to step into the gauntlet. I think that's the right terminology, or you're stepping into an arena and the challenge has been laid down for you to kind of come into some level of mastery. And so with Saturn and Aries, we're going to be experiencing this transit for about 2.5 years. So it's a 2.5 year cycle. Something that you might be feeling is a sense of wanting to quote unquote get your life together, or feeling like there needs to be some structures or some checks and balances in place, but maybe not quite being sure how. How would one be able to get that in order? And that, in essence, we're going to talk about it later as we talk about the other planetary transits, but I believe that's by design. A spoiler alert. And so, another thing you might be feeling is the pressure, like a pressure to do something, a pressure to act on something. And that pressure may also coincide with not wanting to get it wrong. With Saturn, there's a bit of a taskmaster quality to it. And Saturn wants us to get to the point where we are able to discern mastery. And so the feeling of like with Aries, there's this rushing quality, but then with Saturn, there's that restriction. And so this combination of restriction and the gusto of Aries and identity that creates this pressuring point where you might feel literally pulled in those kind of different directions of sitting and waiting, but also needing to initiate. What this could be asking you to contemplate is, uh, who am I? Who am I? We're in this new identity. With Saturn being there, could be identifying what have I come into mastery around, and what am I willing to then maybe leave behind the parts of the things that don't resonate with that mastery, to then step into this version of myself where I've integrated that mastery. And then, so who am I when I've integrated mastery? What does that look like? It could be that there's the invitation to be stepping into more confidence. You know so many things. You've done a lot of work, right? And how do we step into that mastery now, knowing in our hearts that we've done the work? But with that Aries, that threshold of Saturn going into Aries, that's going to create that tension point. And that tension point is going to make you feel like frustrated, perhaps, or feeling like there's an impatience, or even, and in that, there could be some false starts because there might, anytime we enter into a new transit like this is still relatively new. As I record this, this is in March. And with February, that was just right there. We're getting our sea legs in this new energy of that Saturn into Aries. And so the invitation is to take some time to be with that tension, to know that you have come into some mastery, of which that Pisces season was in. When Saturn was in Pisces for the past 2.5 years, that was really about you opening up to a chapter of completion. And that's what Pisces will do. And then there's a little nugget or a little gem that then is carried through into this new phase that we, as in our life cycle, over and over again, that newness, that freshness is a part of the journey. So that's something that can contemplate with the Saturn in Aries energy. So now we have Neptune in Aries. If Aries wasn't getting it enough, we also have Neptune in Aries. And what this speaks to is coming into a spiritual awakening. And yet, with the Neptunian energy, it can be a bit mysterious and a bit foggy. So, Neptune entered Aries January 26th. And what this signifies is the Neptunian qualities coming again into this energy of self, of initiation. Neptune is different, very different than Saturn, and that Neptune is about the dream state. It's about spirituality. It can be about illusion or disillusionment, but it can also be about it's the place in where our poetry comes from. It's the place of art. It's all of the gushy goodness, and it can also have a challenge with boundaries. So when we have Aries that's bringing all of that into this dreamy kind of etheric, coming into Aries, which in my opinion feels a bit more disciplined, we might find that when in whatever area that this is happening in your chart, which you want to identify by the way, that those energies are playing out in a way that would have us really question where we're going with our journey. Saturn is bringing in structure into Aries, and it's saying slow your roll, Aries. You know, we need to make sure that we're moving in a disciplined pace as we bring this kind of fiery energy forward. Whereas Neptune is going to be trailing behind Saturn and bringing back the mystery and bringing back the dreaminess to Aries. And it's in that tightening and that tension of Saturn bringing that discipline to Aries. Neptune is going to bring back this dreamlike quality that it's almost like I'm getting the sense of like Saturn is kind of like buttoning things up and straightening things, while Neptune kind of rushes in with this watery energy and then allows for there to be um, the expansion of the different facets of our identity. We are asked to be in our mastery, and also we are asked to be in exploratory period that takes our personality and our identity beyond what we can perceive. Because where we're going is what this video is ultimately about, and our purpose is we're going to a place where we're going to have to move beyond anything we've ever perceived before. So Saturn's coming in to sturdy your identity. Saturn's coming in to help you feel some sense of groundedness, even though the Aries energy, again, it's initiating and not quite being sure with that Saturn, right? Like kind of looking back at Father Saturn and being like, am I doing this right? And then when Neptune comes in, it's like, oh, by the way, I'm going to open all of these extra doors and give you more sensory experiences and make it so that you can sense and see beyond what was possible before. And so now you have this expanded understanding of your energy system. It's awakened, and yet there's more. So what you might be felt called towards is this is where the purpose energy is really going to be coming into place. And with Saturn leading that way ahead of time, hopefully Saturn was there to calibrate the vision, and then Neptune can come in and it can color the vision. But also what can be challenging about Neptune following Saturn is that it could undo a bit of the vision that Saturn put into place. So if Saturn came in and, made a really nice tie and got you really presentable, Neptune's going to come in and it's going to paint the tie a psychedelic color. It's going to maybe loosen it up a bit, right? And it's walking that balance between the desire and the need to find stability, with also the desire and the need to expand beyond the conventional places of what we've known, collectively and personally. And that can be uncomfortable because the level of expansion that's happening in this admixture of planet, this is astrology we haven't seen in our lifetime. We've never seen anything like this before. So it's going to feel like it's bringing us into these realms that feel really vast and really big and really expansive. And with that spiritual awakening and the Neptune, there can be a lot of confusion. I'd say with Neptune moving into Aries, we could find a lot of people spiritually awakening because Aries represents the collective self, and Neptune is like the most ultimate spiritual planet, that planetary body that we have in the Milky Way. And so we're going to find tons of people in this time period of 14 years, which is the transit, I believe. We'll be finding that within this transit period, all of these people spiritually awakening, and there can be an admixture of confusion if that Saturn, again, taking the time to know who you are, taking the time to create structure and stability as best you can. And then there can be a challenge with this. There can be folks who we call it spiritual bypass, and that's where we're not really willing to accept the assignment. So it could be that in this spiritual awakening, this is where we're kind of hitting ding, 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 purpose time. That there's the opportunity to come into purpose. And in coming into purpose, we could find that the what's on offer within our purpose might feel bigger than we could have ever imagined. It could feel more vast. And in that vastness, we could feel lost and trying to find our mooring within the vastness of our purpose. Because you have to imagine, you have to understand, if we have a massive collective spiritual awakening at the same time, or within relatively short years, a period of about, period of a decade, that's, it's billions of people on the planet. Energetically, from an energy healing perspective, what I'm sensing and what I'm seeing and what I'm channeling as well, that combination will create some of the most beautiful, some of the most innovative, some of the most compassionate, but also within the spectrum of the shadow is also going to create some of the most delusional things that we've ever seen. And it's really going to be important to really ground down into I call it your mighty I am presence. That's grounding really down into that root chakra and saying, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, and this is what I'm about. Identity, self. Who are you? What do you stand for? What are you about? And that Aries energy is that self and that identity that you get to express and you get to say yes to. So the final transit that we're navigating is Uranus enters Gemini April 26th. That's next month as I record this. And Uranus is the planet of disruption, awakening, and innovation, while Gemini is the energy in the zodiac that is associated with the mind, communication, and information. So what happens when we have the Uranus who is here for that innovation and that awakening as well as with Neptune. The thing about Uranus, the awakening that comes with Uranus is spiritual, but I would say that the awakening is to awakening into a higher degree of awareness around what is possible from, I would say, a more intellectual perspective. And Uranus has humanitarian qualities to it, but I would say that whereas with Neptune, the awakening is more so like of a spiritual nature. That's where you could find like a spiritual crisis as a result, where there's like an identity. Like I could see with that transit, that's more so like an identity crisis. Aries with Mercury is identity crisis. Uranus with Gemini is an information awakening and almost being inundated with too much information. And in its shadowy figure in nature, it could also be like the weaponization of information. And so that can be very, that what I imagine would create a sense of what maybe like I want to say paranoia, but there could be this sense. I mean, there could be a real surveillance that we undergo, but there can be this. The nervous system can feel really dysregulated due to like the inability of knowing if your information is safe out there and if you're being surveilled. And so there's what I'm getting from this is the quality of, and this is me just speaking to the shadowy aspect, is that there's surveillance. And in the less shadowy aspect, we're looking at with there can be the sense, well, the last part I will say about the shadow is, and I've said it already, but just overstimulation, feeling very stimulated, like there's a lot of information that's coming in really fast. And if you thought that the scrolling epidemic the doom scrolling epidemic, it could be that this then two, if not three X's that. But what could be the result of that is people finally hitting an edge with information and needing to explore. Because when I think of Gemini, Gemini is the energy of twins. And so, what we might find within this particular transit of Uranus going into Gemini is that people hit the edge of doom scrolling. And so, what's on the other side of doom scrolling? Analog. So, we could find people wanting to connect in person and relay information human to human. Because Uranus is about disruption. So when Uranus comes in, it's going to serve the purpose of disrupting the doom scrolling. There's going to be innovation, innovative ways to disrupt the doom scrolling. And people are going to be able to then link up outside of the screens. Because I think when people think of Gemini and Uranus, they might think of like, wow, it's even more technology. And yes, that's going to still happen. That's going to still be happening. We're still going to have a lot of we're going to have a lot of things that we need to track with what's going on with AI. And we're going to have to really watch that because it's going to feel like things are going to be moving even faster with that. And there's going to be regulation. What I could see though is there being a disruption in AI is a good thing, and that to just slow it down, that there's going to be some like AI is just kind of going gangbusters. Uranus, whenever it comes into something, it almost will kind of toss it up, toss it in its opposite direction in order to disrupt it. So AI has been kind of going gangbusters. Uranus comes into Gemini and tosses it on its head, and then now we have to actually take a moment because okay, whoa, something might happen that's just too much, and everyone's like, okay, we need to like regulate this thing. It's too gangbusters, and so that's one interpretation. Knock on wood, knock on hope. So, what people might be feeling in this time is racing thoughts, overstimulation, questioning everything that they believe because we are already doing that with AI. And so, this will just be more of that the technology is going to be getting kind of eerily realistic. And again, when I harken back to when I just said just now that people are going to be detaching from the internet, part of the reason why people are going to be going analog and finding alternatives to authenticate humans and authenticate human interaction is because of what's happening with the advancement of AI. So AI is going to do something that's quite interesting because AI is moving at the rate that it's moving at. It's going to force us into a more analog lifestyle, and that's quite fascinating. That it's almost going to do the exact opposite effect. Instead of people embracing AI, AI is going to then actually pull people closer to each other. That mixed with the earlier transits of what I noted before, in that you have Neptune in Aries, which is going to be creating spiritual awakenings in people. Possibly people are going to be healing from the challenges and the fractures. Neptune really is about us really connecting with oneness. And with Aries, people are going to be really sitting with their identity and having to understand, given what's been happening before, how their identity is how their identity is shaped by their spiritual or either their opening of the spiritual or the repression of their spiritual. And so with the combination of all three, there could be a bit of mental instability. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. So there's mental instability just because there's all this overwhelm with the Gemini and the Uranus aspect. Both of those are very mental energies. But then we have accelerated spiritual awakening because of the Aries and the Neptune. And then with all three of them put together, people are going to be experiencing identity shifts. Who am I now? It could be that your nervous system might feel overloaded. It could be that there might be a spiritual awakening and the need for there to be structure. So the need for there to be structure around your spiritual awakening where what do I mean by that? So, like, as you do your spiritual awakening, as you come into your spiritual awakening, having a spiritual practice that helps to ground you, helps to keep you in alignment with all of the things that are coming up. And I could, insert a little bit of a vignette in here. So, I had my spiritual awakening back in 2021. Sorry. I had my spiritual awakening back in 2012. It feels like a bit cliche because it feels like 2012, the end of the world. But a lot of people did have their spiritual awakening back then. So I had and looking like when I think about it now, I'm happy I had my spiritual awakening in 2012 because I, yeah, I couldn't imagine having it now given how fast paced the energies are. I'd imagine it might be even more intense now. Um, when I was going through my spiritual awakening, the thing that I noted was how I had the crisis of identity. And what I did was I really took up meditation. This is when I became attuned to Reiki. I was connecting with healing modalities. Like I went and got certified in yoga teacher training. I took a yoga teacher training, and I was just grasping for anything because when the spirituality was starting to activate, something in me knew that I had to feel that awakening. I had to feed that awakening. When you are awake, you are hungry. You're spiritually hungry. And it's important to feed that awakening with good things, to put good things into that spiritual awakening. If not, what happens is then you can perhaps shift into a negative space. And the negative space being, um, yeah, it's been really challenging to witness in others when you have that spiritual opening, you do have a choice. as to if you're going to feed it the good stuff or if you're going to feed it the challenging stuff. And the challenging stuff, I think, with that Neptune is going to create that's that delusion. Feeding it the negative stuff is going to then create that energy going down that path of that delusion. And so, and mental chaos and overwhelm is another point I wanted to name that people might be feeling. And then, as I mentioned before, the lack of feeling grounded. So, what do all of these three transits point to? It points to this importance that this time more than ever is the time for us to really get clear on defining our purpose. As Saturn again moves through that Aries, that is you moving into identity and thinking about you don't have to be perfect, but there's this invisible hand that's pushing you forward and you feel it. You feel that pressure of Saturn really pushing your identity forward and asking for some structuring, and also Saturn's wanting to trim the fat. And so if we put all of these lenses on our identity and thinking about purpose, Saturn is then looking at this thing called purpose for you and saying, is this the purpose that you were intended to do? Is this your purpose? And it's kind of, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the principal it's like, imagine that, the principal is sitting outside after school and there's a student there and you're a parent coming to pick up your child. And the principal's like, is this your child? Right? Is this your child? Is this your purpose? And the principal, Saturn, the authority figure, is asking you if you've picked up your child. Is this your child? And you're coming and you're like, this is my child. This is my creation. This is what I'm saying that I am the parent of. And so there's this opportunity to be the parent of this thing and to be in your purpose by claiming your purpose by way of attesting to what you have created. And that Pisces energy, when Saturn was just back in Pisces, there was creations that happened in that transit. And now with this, there's the principle's like, is this your child? It's like, yeah, that's my child. That's my kid. And then with the Neptune energy and your purpose, there's the opportunity for you to then take this creative project, this purpose, this beautiful thing, and go down all of the different corridors and really allow yourself to expand upon the possibilities. With Neptune, what we find is I like to think of this part of your purpose is the part of your purpose where you with Saturn in there for the next 2 years, you're building something with Neptune in there. There can be you having to go through even probably a more serious level of mastery. Because when the delusion and the illusion and the grandeur and the dreamy quality start to flow through that identity, you're having to come face to face with what is true. And so the thing that I'm being channeled with is, imagine that now you're taking, let's remove this thing from being a child and let's turn your purpose into this like a some sort of scepter. And you're walking through the desert with your scepter. And all of a sudden there's a huge storm and there's sand being blown all the way around you. There's just sand everywhere. And you're walking through and the scepter is glowing. I'm being shown a glowing scepter and it's guiding you through the desert storm. But what you're finding is you might see off in the distance little parties and there's little lights. So like you'll see just like there's little tents around, and if you were to walk, maybe that'd be a mirage. And the only thing that's guiding you towards where you need to go is the scepter, but there's just so many alluring lights around you in the desert sand. And so it's like holding on to your purpose and coming into even more mastery around what it is you're here to do, even given the distractions around you. and really holding true to that. And so that's that archetype of what your purpose looks like within that transit. And then the final transit that I'll speak to is the Uranus in Gemini. So with the Uranus and Gemini transit, your purpose is now not a child and not a scepter. It is now, I'm being shown, your purpose is this beautiful, bright, I'm just being shown like a cube. I'm being shown this golden cube. And it's this golden cube, and it's not a big one, but it's this cube that you might call the innovation cube. And in this cube, everything that this cube touches, it it takes whatever is in that and it amplifies it. And it amplifies. So imagine what Spirit is showing me is, and I'm really dating myself right now, but there's like a Walkman, not a Walkman. What is that? Where it's like you could play CDs. It's a CD player. So imagine a CD player in one hand and this kind of golden cube, and you touch it with the cube, and instead of it transforming it into like, an iPhone or anything, it takes the CD player and it transforms it into like a digitalized version of itself. It keeps its unique qualities. Uranus, it keeps the innovation of it, but it transforms it in a way where like the CD player now turns into this thing that I'm being shown. It kind of like it blasts out into all directions, and the CD people can then come up to the CD and touch it with their palm and feel the music move into their body. And so it just opened up, and like this one little cube that you had touched something and it opened it up into a whole new facet of what it is. And it's this beautiful kind of innovation that this little cube created just by placing it on the CD player. And so there's just this really unique, cool aspect to all of these transits and how they touch your purpose. The homework, because as I mentioned, I'm an educator. As you think about your purpose, how do you think each of these planetary transits is going to color your purpose? You're invited to journal about these three aspects, and I gave you like channeled stories of how each of these different aspects interact with your purpose. Does that resonate for you? I invite you to comment below. I invite you to follow me on this journey. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for having this conversation.